And we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so I'll go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our poster research presentation webinar hosted by AAAS and with our amazing presenter, Dr. Marianne Leon. My name is Neela White. I'm a project director here at AAAS. I'm joined by our presenter, Dr. Leon, and my colleague, Claire Malloy, who you see here, who's going to help facilitate the Q&A and the chat throughout this presentation. So just a quick brief history of myself. I have been at AAAS for about 12 years, and I primarily focus on our HBCU Making an Innovation Initiative, the HBCU work that we have here at AAAS. I'm a project director and co-NSF PI on that project. We are going to use this hour. I'm not going to take up too much time. We're going to use this hour so that Dr. Leon can share how to create a wonderful and amazing poster presentation, but I'm going to give you a brief introduction into AAAS before I hand it over to her. So I'm about to share my screen. And we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so you're here thanks in part to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and as well as the National Science Foundation. A little bit about AAAS. Our mission is to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people. We're a member-focused organization and the world's largest multidisciplinary scientific society. We're also the leading publisher of journals, of the science family of journals, as you see here. And we run a myriad of programs, as you can see. We were founded in 1848, and we're celebrating our 175th year, so that's exciting for us. And we now have members in 91 countries across the globe. So I just wanted to share, I spoke about some of the programs very briefly. Like I mentioned, I run the HBCU Making an Innovation Initiative that we have here at AAAS. We also have a program, Entry Point, which focuses on pretty much students with disabilities and placing them in internships in STEM careers. The IC department, which is the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, which is where Claire and myself work. We kind of house all of the DEI programs for AAAS. So in addition to ERN, in addition to the HBCU Making Initiative, in addition to Entry Point, we also have Sea Change, which aims to advance institutional transformation in support of diversity, equity, inclusion at institutions and universities. We have our If-Then ambassadors, who are amazing female scientists and STEM professionals who provide mentoring opportunities for young women across the country. We had them highlighted at the Smithsonian. They have their statues, just amazing, amazing accomplished women. And then we also do a few fellowships, which include the L'Oreal USA Fellowships for Women in Science, and not listed here, but we also do one for female chemists, which is the Marion Mason Awards for Females in Chemistry. And what you all are here for, obviously, is our Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM, ERN, which is actually coming up very soon. We're less than 3 weeks out, February 9th and 11th, and we look forward to having you all in person in Washington, D.C. The funder for this program is the National Science Foundation HBCU Up program. We want to acknowledge our program officer, Carlita Page Anderson. We have been, very fortunate to have the EARN conference funded for 10 years now through the HBCU Up program. The goals and objectives of the conference are to prepare a diverse cadre of students for global careers in STEM and to hone their science communication skills. And some of the activities that our students will be participating in will be undergraduate and graduate STEM research presentations, which is why we are here today to talk about the poster presentations. We will also be offering professional development workshops, educational and career fairs, and then our plenaries, which are fantastic with very distinguished STEM luminaries. And before I switch over to Marianne, I want to make sure that I acknowledge the AAAS EARN project teams, who some of you have been emailing or may be familiar with. We are with great thanks to our director and PI, Dr. Iris Flagstaff, who is the program director of this project. Myself, Neela, I'm a project director. I'd also like to acknowledge Allison Gonzalez, who's not on, she's a senior program associate. My colleague Claire, who's on here, who's doing such an amazing job and so much work. So with thanks to Claire, she is doing all the behind the scenes work. So when you all come in a few weeks, you will see all the work that has been put in place by Claire and also by Janice Lim, who is our events operation manager. And then Gabby Haynes, who I'd like to acknowledge, who is our external evaluator. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm not this is time for Marianne. So I want to pass it on to you, Dr. Marianne Leung, and you all are in for a wonderful presentation. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Neela. And hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you to kind of talk a little bit about doing poster presentations at ERN or otherwise. And yeah, I'm just really happy to be a part of it. I'm super excited to be able to have the opportunity to hopefully meet many of you at the conference after the little hiatus of COVID-induced absence. I think everyone is really excited. I feel very lucky to have been involved in this program since the beginning. So I have been doing these webinars, and also I serve as a judge. So I get to go out and meet people and see what they're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. And as Neela said, please, 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 please feel free to interrupt me throughout, because this really is all about you guys and what we can do to help you learn how to deliver an excellent research poster presentation and have a great time. You know, just to give you a little background on myself. So I am a first generation college, scientist, and was trained in chemistry, computational chemistry, and have kind of migrated my career more towards workforce development and helping others develop their careers. So I'm really happy to be here. So just going over a few things. This is scheduled as a 60-minute webinar. That includes time for Q&A. And as we said, please feel free to ask your questions throughout. Sometimes it's just a lot easier while it's on your mind. And I have no problems at all with you interrupting me. So, so feel free to do that either through the chat or raising your hand or just taking yourself off mute. I love hearing from you guys. So first of all, what I want to do is I actually want to learn a little bit about you guys. So I'm going to open up a poll and ask a few questions so we can learn about who you are and what you're interested in. And just to make a few notes, this poll is just a tool that I use so that everyone can interact anonymously, and your data will remain anonymous and not ever be used in the future for anything. This is not like evaluation data or anything like that. So with that, I'm going to go to my poll and open it up. And if you go to the link that I believe has been dropped in the chat, you can just respond. This is a free form question. So how are you feeling today? You can type in a word or a series of words. If you want the words to stick together, you can put a hyphen between them. And I believe it does allow you to enter in a few answers. So just kind of checking in on everyone, seeing how you're doing. Looks like there's a lot of people that are great. I'm so excited about that. So this is, you can see what happens is when you enter, answers to this question, it creates a word cloud. And so the biggest, most popular words are going to be the largest. So great so far is the most popular. I'm glad to hear that. You see some complaints and some excited and some pretty good. So wonderful. Okay, there we go. So now we're getting a few more responses. Okay, now we're seeing it. You can also text your response to the number shown on the screen as well, if you prefer that. So good is our most popular word so far. Give any people a chance. I know you have to log in, so just let this first question, take a little longer. You log in. Once you log in, though, you can just keep answering the questions as long as I have the poll open. But okay, well, it looks like we've kind of settled down on our responses. So good and pretty good and great seem to be the top winner. So I'm really happy to see that. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And that is, who is your favorite scientist, engineer, or mathematician, or just some tech geek? So I'm just kind of curious out there, do you have like a, famous idol? It could be your teacher or anybody, just someone that you think is kind of cool. Whoever that is for you. I don't know what your field is, so it could be different. Shirley Malcolm, yay, I like that. That is great. She is my hero too. She's a pretty amazing person. So Marie Curie is absolutely one of mine. I did a report for her in one of my undergraduate classes on, and I think she's pretty amazing. So Mom is also a great person to be your favorite scientist, engineer, mathematician, or tech geek. I like that. Mary Daly was another one. Look at all these women. I'm so happy to see that. Let's see. I'm trying to see who else I can pull out of here. Does something, she's something that counts, I'm not sure. Any other favorites you want to throw into the link? It looks like so far there's not too many that are like standing out, but that's great. We're getting a lot of good ones. Mae Jemison, oh my gosh, she's pretty amazing, isn't she? Astronaut, right? Yeah, very good. All right. Okay, well, it looks like we've settled down on our responses, so I'll go ahead and go to my next question. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. It's just kind of a fun way. Okay, so now we're getting down to a little more serious questions. What is your academic status? So I'm curious where you are in your academic career. I see we have some undergraduates and master students. Very good. So this simple question, just to kind of give me an idea of where you guys are at with your academic background. Great, so quite a few undergrads and masters and other is fine. Anyone else? Okay. All right, good. Okay, so great. A lot of undergrads. So I do believe that this webinar will be helpful for people at all different academic levels, but it's also really nice for me to know that there's a large percentage of undergrads. So I'll keep that in mind as we go, because I want to, like I say, I want this to be all about you guys and you getting what you need to prepare for presenting a poster. Okay, so the next questions, what are your plans after you graduate? Are you going to continue on with your education? For instance, all the undergrads, are you going to go to grad school? If you were a graduate student, are you planning on getting a postdoc or getting a job in academia, industry, government, nonprofit, or maybe just do something else? So good. A lot of people going on to grad school, so I'm happy to see that. Great. And going into industry and getting government jobs. Okay, very good. All right, so this is very useful again. Let's see. Looks like we've settled all our answers, so I'll go ahead and go on to the next one. Have you ever given a poster presentation at any conference at all? Yes or no? Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, great. So we have a few more no's than yeses, but so that's really helpful to know as well. So I do believe that this will be hopefully a helpful presentation for both people who have already given posters and who have not. And if you have, and you want to give any advice or ask specific questions about your experience, please feel free to do that. And here's another question. Are you planning on giving an oral, oh, this should say a poster presentation, sorry, at ERN. So this is just to let me know in here if most people are preparing for ERN. This is open, as I understand, to anyone, so you don't have to be going to ERN to be part of this. But of course, I think a lot of people are getting ready to prepare. So looks like everyone is, so that's great. And I'll look forward to seeing you. Okay, so that is, I'm gonna stop this now because yeah, so that's all the questions for now. I'm going to go back to my slides and start going on to the presentation. So first of all, I want to just give you an overview of what I'm planning to talk about. You know, a lot of people don't think about this, but I think the first thing to start talking about is why you should even consider giving a poster. Hopefully, most of you are, you know, are planning on going and giving it. But why did you do it? Are you doing it because maybe your faculty advisor said told you to do it or whatnot? But I think it's really important to consider those reasons why it's important to give a poster before we even get into the details of how to do it, how to do a good job of it. I'm going to go over the judging criteria. So you may or may not be aware, but there will be judges. As I mentioned, I'll be serving as a judge. And so we'll talk about how the judges are going to review you as a poster presenter. And then we'll talk about how to prepare your poster, how to prepare yourself. And then actually when you try to present your poster, I'll try to give you some tips about that, and then how to handle the discussion portion of the poster presentation. So here we go. Why give a poster? So I have a few items here, and anyone feel free to, you know, add in some things, ideas that you have of your own into the chat, or come off mute. But when you're trying to do a poster presentation of your research, of course, you know, hopefully you want to share your research. You're excited about what you were able to find when you in your project, what your results are. You know, it's an opportunity for you to communicate your excitement for your research and demonstrate your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities. But believe it or not, so a lot of people don't think about this, but it's also an opportunity for you to learn from others. The thing that I really like about posters is that it's very interactive. So it's really more of a dialogue with the person who comes up to talk with you. Of course, you have to be prepared with your presentation, but it's more, you know, there's, you know, one or two people, however, depending, maybe half a dozen people sitting there listening to you, but it's very interactive. And in that interactive dialogue process, you can actually learn from others about how you can advance your research or other topics. You can learn about opportunities that they might have. And of course, the big one, which a lot of people think about, is prizes and awards. And there are prizes and awards at the ERN conference. They are typically cash awards. But more importantly, if you receive an award like Best Poster or something like that, that is a huge gold star on your CV or your resume. And so that's a way to, in my opinion, is even more important than getting cash, is being able to have those bragging rights and to help you stand out when you go out to look for jobs or postdocs or other opportunities. So next, we're going to talk about the judging criteria. And there are actually several different components of your poster that you will be judged on. Believe it or not, your abstract, which I know you've already submitted, so there's not much you can do about it now, but keep this in mind for the future. That is part of the judging criteria. We look at the abstract, we look at how what's covered in the abstract, how well it conveys a good idea of what someone can expect when going to the poster. We also look at the actual poster presentation and see, we judge the statement, your statement of the problem that you're trying to address, your methodology. So whatever process you used, you know, talking about that, making sure that you present your results and talk about your future work. And then just in general, like how you orally present and respond to questions, and then kind of the overall presentation itself, kind of what some of us kind of call the wow factor. Like if you really just did a stellar job and explaining everything, That's kind of falls into the category I call overall presentation and or wow factors. So next I'm going to move on to talking about how to prepare your poster. And first I'm going to take a step back and think about how you can first organize your ideas. And the way you organize your ideas, I want you to think about your audience. So who are you going to be talking to, and what do they and do they not know about what you're going to talk about? So you're going to present a poster about a particular project you work on, the research that you did. You know, how much do you think they're going to already know? Because a lot of times people jump into a lot of technical details and the person is maybe from a different field or something and gets lost right away, and you don't want that to happen. So be careful about thinking about who you're expecting to come up to your poster and how you're going to talk to them. The other thing is I'm going to suggest that you organize your presentation in generally at least cover these topics. I like this particular order. Of course, you don't have to necessarily follow this exact order, but you want to first definitely start out with an overview or a motivation. So the first thing when you're giving any kind of presentation is you want to catch people's attention. And so it's like, why should this person care? So why is your work important? A lot of people do work with kind of the elevator pitches. I think that's kind of what you're trying to get at in the first part when you start your poster presentation. Get people excited and get them to want to listen in. And then you, of course, want to go over the background, so set a context for your work, and then start getting into the details of what you actually did, what results you found, discuss the importance of the work, as well as going into future work and acknowledgements. And I'll go over in more detail these sections. So the other thing that I'd like to suggest for people is that you think about trying to tell a story. I mean, it was funny when I was first starting out and my academic advisor told me this, you know, what story are we telling? I thought, this is science. What do you mean telling a story? We did some things, we got some results, but actually, you know, any good presentation, you really are telling a story. So there's, you know, what happens with stories, you know, you're probably familiar with TV shows or movies or books or magazines or whatnot. Stories always have components. There's the beginning, there's actors in the story, there's the middle, there's some twists and turns, some endings. Like, what kind of stories do you like? Like mysteries or adventures? You know, think about good stories and the components of them and what kind of gets you in keeping to reading or listening or watching to what it is. So these are all kind of components of good storytelling. So now, kind of thinking about how to tell a good scientific story, the tips that I have is, first of all, recognizing that in science, you learn more and more about less and less. What does that mean? That means that we get very focused in on a lot of very specific technical details in, you know, like, so let's say for me, my training is chemistry. Within chemistry, I did physical chemistry. Within physical chemistry, I did computational physical chemistry. Within there, I did, you know, quantum mechanics, and I was simulating things for quantum computers. So more and more specific areas. And the more you get focused on these specific areas, kind of you're less general. And that's kind of what the first bullet is talking about. And then what I'm going to suggest to you is that the real key to giving a good story, telling a good scientific story, is figuring out how to balance all of those technical details that you have and know based on the work that you did with really being able to reach your audience. And I would suggest that this is really an art to be able to figure out who's out there, how to get them excited without overwhelming them with all the technical details, but also by exciting them by the technical details. So that's where why I started by talking about knowing your audience and figuring out how to reach them. That is going to be key, because if you're really good at communicating to a broad group of people who who don't necessarily know all the technical details, but you do, demonstrate that what the cool things about what you really figured out and did, that is like gold. Because no matter where you go, you're going to be having to sell people on your work. You're going to be asking for jobs, for internships, for postdocs, for money to fund your work. And it's all kind of key to being able to communicate to people why they should invest in you. So just to summarize, so telling your story and your good scientific story in the right context is essential, and that requires you knowing your audience, telling a good organized story so people can follow you, and balancing scientific detail with the big picture in an understandable way so that you can reach everyone and get them excited about what your work is. So next, I'm going to go to another poll question. So I'm going to go back to my poll and present here. And okay, and let's see, I think I can go to the next question. Hold on. Okay, let me try again. Present. And hold on a second. I'm going to advance to my question. Okay, almost, sorry. Okay, so tell me about what academic discipline you are in. So these are some broad categories. Kind of biological and chemical sciences so far. Those are the winners. No science or, okay, there we go. So now biology is winning. Any science, and mathematics, education, or social sciences? No? Okay, good. So we have majority are biological, ecology, environmental, earth sciences, and not too far behind is the chemistry and chemical sciences. And we have a few in the social and behavioral economic sciences. Great. So we have a good variety. The next question is do you think ERN is a technical conference focused on a specific subdiscipline? So the question is, do you think ERN is a technical conference focused on a specific subdiscipline, yes or no? There we go. So when I say a specific subdiscipline, it's like one of the very specific areas of a particular discipline. Disciplines being like biology, chemistry, mathematics, engineering, so on and so forth. Okay, so this looks like we're settling down on our answers, and most people say no. And actually that is correct, because if you recall from the last one, we had people in a lot of different disciplines that and everyone said that they were going to earn. So that, at least from the sampling we have in this one, that is really where we're at on that one. So I'll go back here. The reason why I asked that question is based on the fact that ERN has a lot of different disciplines represented. What do you think, what kind of person do you think would come up and, maybe see your poster? Anyone want to care to take a guess at that? Anyone's brave enough to go off mute and say something? I don't know if it's in the chat. Let me see. I'll just see what's on. I kind of, when I'm presenting, I can't follow the chat, but so let's say you're a biologist. Do you think everyone who comes to you see a poster is going to be a biologist? So Faith says no. Yep, I think that's right. You know, so we probably and what if like you're a structural biologist and do you think all the people are going to come by and be structural biologists? Probably not, right? So so that's the thing about knowing your audience. So what does that mean? That tells you that you have to be prepared for what happens if someone who, if you're a structural biologist and someone who is a different kind of biologist comes up, or what if it's a chemist or a mathematician? You have to kind of be prepared to talk to them and explain things in a way that someone who really isn't even in your field is going to be able to understand. So anyways, with that, I want to go on and talk a little bit about actually preparing your poster. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is, I suggest that you use professional, presentation software and templates, which nowadays I think most people do. I use PowerPoint. It depends on what platform you're on. When you're preparing it, you can of course be creative, but also try to keep it professional. And I do suggest using things like color or bolding and whatnot to highlight things, and including, you always want to include a title for your poster, and typically it's a title with the authors as well. And you want to kind of be careful to keep the amount of text to a minimum, as well as equations, unless of course you're a mathematician and you need to use a lot of equations. And I encourage you to use graphics and charts and images as well, and be sure to run a spell checker. So the next topic I want to talk about is what I call chunking and organizing your thoughts. So you want to, first of all, make sure you don't put too much information and too much text on your poster so that it's like too crowded and people won't be able to kind of zone in on the particular parts. From cognitive theory, I'll share with you that there's a 5 to 7 rule, and that is that you want to have no more than 5 to 7 ideas or bullets or whatnot in any particular section. So you want to chunk things into like around 5 to 7 ideas or items. And the reason why you do that is because humans don't have very good memories, and they can really only remember about 5 to 7 things at any one time. So this is the idea where you break things up into small bite-sized pieces, and then you develop a logical flow between those pieces. And you use what we call signposts to help people follow your train of thought. So the other thing that you want to include on your slides is you want to make sure that you use large fonts. Of course, these are large posters formats that will be printed, so you want to make sure if someone's standing, 6 or 10 feet away, they can still read most of what's on your poster. You want to keep your graphics simple, unless you have some real complex topic. In some cases, maybe there's a very detailed schematic or drawing or whatnot. But in general, this whole idea of kind of helping people digest things at any one time by keeping it fairly simple is a good idea. I do suggest you can use what we call cartoons or illustrations to get abstract ideas across. And it's really a good thing to try to combine graphics and text so that you can appeal to multiple learning styles. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there are lots of different ways that people learn and can communicate the best. Myself, I'm a very visual learner, so I want to see things. I want to see a lot of pictures. Other people are more auditory or more text-based. So if you use a lot of if you combine those medium, you'll be able to reach more people. So next I'm going to talk about what I call the anatomy of a good poster. So what are the good parts of a poster? And the first thing is you always, and this again is based on cognitive theory or instructional design theory, and you always want to start by overviewing. So you kind of tell them what you're going to tell them. Notice that I started my presentation today with an overview of what I would be covering. So I told you what I'm going to cover. And then in this overview, I suggest when you're giving a scientific poster that you always want to motivate people. Why should they care? And the motivation typically involves a real world application of what you're working on. So if you're, synthesizing some chemicals, what are those chemicals good for? And why would you even care about creating these molecules? So what is, maybe it's because you're synthesizing chemicals that will be drugs that can be used to cure cancer, something like that. You talk about curing cancer, all of a sudden people's ears are going to perk up and you're going to get their interest. So you definitely want to know why is it important to do that. And you want to motivate people right up front. The next thing is you want to set your work within the background. This is typically, if you're writing papers, this is what we call the literature search part. So you're going to be familiar with what other people are doing in your field related to your work, and you want to put your work in that context. So you say, I'm trying to synthesize this particular, molecule so that it can be used for, to bind to this other molecule to this binding site, because that will block, the cancer. And what other people, the approach that other people are using is XYZ, and our approach is this, and this is why it's so cool and why it's so unique and novel and interesting. So that's how you draw people in, you provide them a context of what other people are doing and how your work is related within that. Then, of course, you can get into the actual methods. What exactly did you do? What procedures did you follow? Whatnot. A lot of times I find that people forget to talk about their methods. They just jump right to the results. But really, people want to understand how you came up with these results. So a good scientist is going to want to understand what you actually did and how you came to the results, and be able to follow that and understand the context of your results. Then, of course, you do want to make sure you get to your results and what you discovered, what you found. The cool thing about doing research is that you're working on problems that have not been solved yet. And so what you find is super exciting. For a minute, something no one else knows until you go out and start telling people and talking about it. Then we get an idea of what really happened and what are the results of your efforts. And then there's what we call the discussion section, which again, I think a lot of people tend to forget about. And that is, what does this mean? So you got some results, but what does it mean? In other words, what is your interpretation of the results? So you have some charts maybe, or you have synthesized a molecule. What does it really mean to have these results? How do you interpret what you found? And then you always want to end with a summary. So you start with telling people what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then at the end, you tell them what you told them. And this is a technique which really helps people because of this thing about how much a person can remember. So if you go through this process of telling them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you remind them at the end what you told them, then people might actually remember. They will remember more, basically. And then, of course, you also want to make sure that you talk about future work. Again, this is an area that I see a lot where people don't, talk about what's next. The kind of the good and the bad about research is that there's always more work. There's always more to learn, more to understand. And I think that's like really exciting because, that's the nature of discovery. You discover things and then there's like, oh, so now that we learn this, that could help us elucidate these other questions or other areas and whatnot. So you want to be able to talk about that and share with people. I know a lot of times students, you don't have, you go for a summer and you just do a project and you're not necessarily going to continue the project, but knowing if you could continue the project, what would be next? That's a sign of a very inquisitive mind, and also someone who's familiar with like where would you take this beyond. And this is also a way a lot of times people think oh, I didn't, get enough research done in my summer, I ran out of time. Well, you got what you got done is what you got done. So you kind of share with that. And then if you had more time, what would you do? That's kind of what we cover in the future work section. And last but not least, of course, you want to acknowledge who helped, who funded, and who else helped to make this work happen. So here are a few example formats that I want to share with you. So there are kind of different ways to organize the data. What I want to point out is that there are what I call these signposts, which are like in the first example, labeled number 1, there's these headings: abstract, motivation, background, methods, results, discussion, future work, acknowledgements. So within those are basically what I was talking about, how you chunk your thoughts. So, and you use signposts, and in this case, it's just big titles to say, over here is where I have this part, and so on and so forth. So I find that to be a very useful format, and it helps people to catch their attention so they know where to go look for whatever information they're looking for. Of course, you want to always have your poster title and your authors and your institutions and whatnot. And like I say, the other formats here are just different ways to visually break up the space that you have in a poster and whatnot. So those are just a couple examples. I do have one more poll question, which I will initiate now. We can go to that one now. Oops. Go. All right. So which of the poster examples, styles do you like the most? This is actually just no wrong answers, just getting a little feedback of which ones you like the best. So people are liking the first and the second ones. So those are the ones with the bounding boxes around it. Okay, we like the third as well. Good. All right. So I'll see if I can make this so you can see the examples next door. There we go. Yeah, now we can see both the examples and whatnot. So people like the first one the best. So these are like the long columns with the titles. And then second one is the one where it's kind of like a little section for each one. And then this one, there's no backgrounds, which, yeah, so there we go. Okay, so these are just some examples of formats you can use, and you can kind of come up with your own. The basic idea, though, is trying to, chunk your thoughts and the way you organize what you're presenting on your poster. You do want to have these sections that I'm recommending, and then visually you can see there's ways for you to also chunk them, so it makes it easier for people to see. Okay, so I'm gonna pause for just a minute and see if there's any questions. Do we have any questions?
I didn't see anything come through on the chat, but if anybody has anything, you can feel free to either take yourself off mute, you can raise your hand if needed, or you can put a question in the chat right now if you have any questions.
Hello. I was just wondering if we would have access to this after this is over.
Yes, we'll be providing you with access to the recordings in the slides. You'll receive an email after this that will indicate where the recording and the slides will be located on our site.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay.
Okay.
Marianne, I think we're free to go on.
Okay, great. So I will continue on. And so there we go. So the next section is, so we talked about how to prepare your poster. The next section is preparing yourself. How do you prepare yourself for presenting your poster? And I will just point out here, like these signpost ideas is what I've been using down here on the bottom. You recall that I gave an outline of what I'm going to talk about, and now I'm preparing yourself is the section. So I've highlighted that down here. In terms of the first piece of advice that I want to give you is called practice, practice, practice. So I really do suggest that you practice. I know when I first started out doing these kinds of presentations, I felt kind of silly about practicing, but it really, really helps. Even just being able to practice formulating, getting the thoughts from your head out your mouth to someone is really, really important. And it really helps you. And I usually, when I try to perform, I practice like right before I have to perform and give a poster, because it really does help me so that it kind of comes out more clearly and I don't kind of, get lost. When you practice, I suggest that you practice amongst your peers. I also strongly encourage you to think about what I talked about. Who's going to be out there wherever you're going at ERN, for example? Who do you think might be coming up to talk to you? And so pick people that are going to be like your target audience, the people who you think will be there, and definitely include people who don't already know your work. And so that you can kind of get, really kind of getting feedback from them. When you practice, make it like as if you're, doing a rehearsal, and get feedback from people to ask them, what things did they not understand, or where would you need to provide more clarification on things or whatnot. So it's a really great opportunity for you to prepare yourself for the real thing. And then, of course, know your stuff, of which you do already. You may not think that, or you may not feel that way, but you do know your stuff. You're the one who did the project, did your research, and just prepare yourself for questions. So ask when you practice, ask people to ask you questions, so you kind of get the, an idea of the kinds of things that people might ask you, but also prepare to do what I call dance on your feet, and that just be natural and able to kind of answer whatever questions come up. Unexpected things. I know. How do you prepare for the unexpected? Really, you prepare for the unexpected by learning techniques to just be a little bit calm and whatnot. So in terms of the poster guidelines, here are the guidelines from ERN. So on the left side, I assume, are what most people will really be concerned about, because that's poster presentations. But if anyone here is giving an oral, I've included that as well. So definitely make sure you arrive no later than 15 minutes early. And to set up your poster, I believe you can actually set up your poster far more earlier than 15 minutes. And I suggest that you do that, because sometimes people like to come by and view the posters ahead of time. Typically, when I go to conferences, people set up their posters, even sometimes when, the night before, or maybe that morning. You should plan on having it like a 10-minute presentation, you would take 5 minutes to present, and then 2 minutes for a Q&A, and then 2 minutes for a transition to the next presentation. So that's kind of what the guidelines are for the judges. So when you have a judge there, you can think about this timeline. If you're working with someone who's not a judge, then and you want to spend more time with Q&A, then you can certainly do that. But it's good guideline to, when you practice, kind of practice to have basically a 10-minute story that you're telling. So your posters are going to be going on a poster board. The assignments will be sent out to you by the end of next Monday. And so you'll know kind of like where you'll get a poster number, basically. And when you get to the conference, there'll be a map, and you can figure out where your poster is. There's a lot of posters. So you'll make sure you allow yourself some time to figure out where your poster is going to be, where your poster board is, and then you can put your poster up there. Now, really importantly, your posters are supposed to be no more than 4 feet by 3 feet. That's 4 feet in length and 3 feet wide. So that's really important, because the poster boards are only so big, and Yeah, so that you make sure that it fits on there. And that orientation is the typical orientation as well. So you want to make sure that your poster will fit on there. And really importantly, which some people, this is a question that a lot of people ask and sometimes forget, is you have to print your poster and bring it with you. So no one, you do actually have to have the physical poster at the conference with you so that you can, there'll be thumbtacks there and you can, just, mount it on the poster board. You can find the guidelines online at this link, theemergingresearchers.org/presentation guidelines. And I strongly encourage you to go ahead and go and look at those guidelines. So a few more things about presenting. When you present, you want to make sure that you're wearing what I call, scientific professional attire. Science, depending on what field you are, there are different kind of norms for how you look, but you definitely don't want to be too casual and wear any of the kinds of things that I've just have described on this list here. And when you do it, you want to make sure you stand up straight, you don't fidget too much or play with your hair or whatnot. You just want to look professional. We tend to call it like science casual is usually what you find at most conferences. You also want to, yes?
There's a question in the chat about abstracts and whether they should be reworded.
Oh, that's a great question.
It says, would we have to reword the abstract we submitted differently or just keep it the same? I'm asking in order to fit it into the 5 to 7 bullet frame.
Right. So that's a great question. Your abstract on your poster, I would say that to actually put it on the poster, because again, we want to have not too much, depending on how long it is that you've already submitted. I would suggest that you may want to condense it and just make it a little shorter version. Most people tend to write fairly long abstracts. So I would suggest that you, it doesn't have, if the question, you don't have to have the exact same abstract on your poster that you submitted. I would suggest a briefer, more summary version. I think I've answered that question. If not, just let me know. Great. Okay, so I talked about looking the part. Now I'm talking about speaking the part. So make sure that you speak loudly, clearly, and confidently. I know having confidence isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, especially if you're an undergrad and new at this and you've never done it before. But what's kind of amazing is that you can look confident even though you don't feel it. So it's there are techniques to standing up straight, like articulating with a loudly, basically makes a difference. If you have a small voice and I know this because when I was very, very shy when I was a younger girl, and I learned that even though I was kind of shaking in my boots inside, if you speak loudly and clearly, you're going to look confident, even though maybe you don't feel so confident inside. So these are some tips and techniques that you can use. And then the more you do this, you're going to gain that confidence. So once you do it once, then you go, oh, hey, maybe that wasn't so bad. I'm going to be good about it. Be careful about not doing distracting things like mumbling or chewing on gum, things like that. And then you want to really connect with your audience. And again, that's the really nice thing about posters is you have an opportunity to have it be a little more casual. And so make eye contact, smile, ask questions of them. Don't feel like you have to do all the talking. I mean, it's actually a really good technique to be able to ask questions of the audience, and then you customize what you're saying about that. You want to engage your audience. Answer questions as best you can. If you don't know the answer, that's fine. You can say, I don't know the answer to that, but that's a great question. I can look that up. And wow, that's kind of a neat thing that's another way to learn from people that you're talking to. And try to, again, not talk to the audience, not your poster. And feel free to be yourself and convey your excitement. So here's a quick checklist. So I also like studying the stage. So I go and look at the space ahead of time. So I feel comfortable in there physically and whatnot. get ready, you've practiced, you know what you're going to say. If you have any fears about speaking to the public, do whatever you can to try to overcome that. Practice will help. Breathing slowly ahead of time will do that. Visualizations or affirmations, everyone has their own techniques. When you're standing there, you know, again, these techniques of standing tall, lifting your chest, it's going to help you speak more loudly and clearly. You're going to look more confident. Take your time. Don't feel like you have to rush yourself. But if you practice, you know how to keep yourself on time, because you don't want to go over time. And don't drift at the end. That's the most common thing that I see, is you really want to have what I call a crescendo at the end. You know, like this is like really cool, and this is why I did this, and thank you. So be yourself, establish a rapport, and have some fun. It's basically the summary of this section here. So in terms of discussions, the biggest tip I can give you about taking questions is to first listen, make sure you heard the question. And if you're not sure what they're asking, you know, repeat it back to them or ask for clarification as best as you can. Reply with confidence and, of course, courteousness, and take your time to explain. And like I say, it's okay if you don't know the answer to every question that gets asked. So other techniques that you can use is using, like I say, imagery or analogies when you're talking. That's a great way to help people connect with what your work is. And there's a ton of content out there. So here is an example of a poster that I did a long, long time ago, which has a lot of information on it, but you can see I have some images, some photos, some equations, and some quote cartoons of topics. I have results. I have all the sections that I mentioned before. This is just an example of a poster. And with that, I am going to end, and again, see if there's any questions. And if not, I'll let Neela take us through our wrap up. I know we're getting close to our time limit.
Thank you so much, Marianne. So yes, thank you for the presentation. That was great. As people have asked, yes, we will have this recording available after the presentation. It's important, though, that since we have Marianne here, I do want to allow anyone who has any questions. There's no bad questions. Anything that you may be thinking of for your poster presentation when you all present at ERN, please take the time now to ask her if you have anything. I'll give everyone about a few minutes, a few moments if you have any questions. Oh, good. Are there any kind of questions that we should expect to be asked at the conference? Marianne, do you see the question that Zaria placed in the chat? Are there any common questions that we should expect to be asked at the conference?
I would say, the questions that you'll get asked will be, dependent on your area and your poster itself, so that, you'll get specific questions that way. But in general, the questions are going to be covering those topics that I talked about. Why is it important? What did you do? What are your results? What do your results mean? What would you do, if you were continuing on this project? Really, those are the kinds of questions that I myself as a judge I want to know that. And if I didn't hear it in the presentation, I will ask you those questions. So that's a great question to ask. And that's what I would say is, and that's kind of why I structured my presentation this way. Oh, there's a question I see about the oral presentations. You do not use your own computer. You will have to arrive early. I think it was on that slide I showed for the guidelines. You have to arrive early and bring your presentation on a flash drive, and then you load it onto the computer. And then it'll be, it'll be on, there'll just be one computer, and then the presentations will be loaded up in the order that they're listed in the schedule.
Correct.
Yeah.
Question. Thank you, Carol. Any other questions? All right. I want to be mindful of everyone's time since you all have agreed to join us until 2:30. So I have one final slide that I'm going to share with you all. We've gone through these already. So our final slide is to please complete our post-webinar survey. We will be sending that via email. You should be receiving it in the next 15 minutes. But also Claire will be putting it in the chat, but please complete the survey. It helps ourselves, AAAS, it helps Dr. Leong to make sure that we're providing the correct information, stuff that is useful to you all. So please complete the post-webinar survey as soon as possible. For more information on the ERN conference, you can visit our website, emergingresearchers.org. And then this is a key one, to please be on the lookout for email communications from the AAAS ERN team. There are updates that are going to be coming, especially as we are moving much closer to the date of our in-person event. So you'll be receiving emails in the coming dates. Again, we were talking about, someone asked about the dress code and things like that. We will be sharing that information in emails within the next week or so. So please be on the lookout for that. The email address is earnconference@aaas.org. Save that to your contacts so that you do receive that message. And then as always, please follow us on social media. We have both Twitter and LinkedIn, so you can see the links here to those pages. But once again, Dr. Leong, thank you so much for this presentation. It was wonderful. And I think that our student presenters who will be coming, oh, it looks like there's a couple of questions that just came through while I was talking. Marissa asked, if we receive the ERN Travel Award, do we have to bring our own poster or will it be provided? They will be bringing their own posters. That's correct, Dr. Wright. Oh, sorry, Claire answered that. Thank you, Claire. Sorry. Note cards allowed on hand while you present the poster. Marianne?
Yeah, I think that's fine if you want to use note cards. I've seen that before, so I don't think anyone will have a problem with that.
Anything else? Anything else? We don't want to miss out on the opportunity to ask these questions. So if that is it, and there are no more questions, you all will be well prepared. Thank you all. Oh, how do we know where to go? Oh, sorry. For the oral presentations. So for all the presentations, there will be lots of signage you'll receive. When you be on the lookout for those emails, we will indicate the area, the room, the location where these poster and oral presentations will take place. So there, once you get there, you'll have a full program. We will have an online app as well, Huva, which is amazing, which has a virtual map to show you where all the locations are for the workshops, for the plenaries, for the poster and oral presentations. All of that will be provided to you. So you'll have all that information. Okay. Anything else? You're very welcome. All right, it is about to be 2:35. We ran 5 minutes over, but it's well worth it to make sure that you all have been provided with the information to be successful in your poster presentations. Dr. Leong, thank you so much once again for providing your time and expertise, as one of our attendees has stated. Claire, thank you for all the behind the scenes work and for also helping us facilitate this. And to our attendees, thank you all for taking the time out your afternoons or mornings, depending on where you're located, to attend. And we look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Good luck. Say hello at ERN.
Yeah.